Chris, thank you so much for coming on the Truly Present podcast. It's such an honor.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation. I'm passionate about this. I talk about this every single day. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, ever since I got rid of my smartphone, I have been like a walking billboard for the wise phone. It's so funny. Like everyone knows me
Yeah,
as the dumb phone person.
that's
um,
awesome. But you're actually the smartest one in the room. I'll just throw that out there. Yeah.
well, I had to learn the hard way that smartphone life wasn't for me. So, um, but yeah, tell my audience the Cliff Notes version of the story behind both Techless as the company and the Wise Phone. Yeah, the main product that you guys sell, and the Wise Phone too. That's going to be coming up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me type it in Chat GBT for the Cliff Notes. I'm joking. Just no. Okay. Yeah. I'll unpack. So for a while there, I've had a bunch of kids, foster kids, coming and going in my house, and there was this one point where I had 10 and 13-year-old girls, and the caseworkers dropped them off at their house, and they walked away. And as they were walking out the door, they said, "Wait! Don't let them near anything that looks like a smartphone." But they have smartphones, and I'm like, how do we handle this? Like parenting foster conundrum of like, hey, kids are used to technology, but they've done some really dark things. I'm more talking like soul sucking stuff on their smartphones. And it was just not a good situation. And so that was a moment where I had to ask the question about, hey, what's broken? Dive in, investigate. And when I look into things, I go deep. Okay. So that was like the beginning of the rabbit hole, but it turned into this bigger question of not just what's broken with the kids' phones, but what's broken with my phone, what's broken with culture's phones. And so I did this big, huge search, like, hey, what's the theology of technology? All this stuff. And out of that came Techless. And I was also leading a 500-person organization. I was kind of working with internal transformation, cultural transformation using design thinking. So created systems and processes and methodology to create excellence. So take this idea of, hey, our smartphones are broken, and this idea of, hey, there's could be a opportunity for systematic change to change culture and combine those two. And I said, hey, there's a solution, but to the smartphone epidemic here. So I don't know. That's the Cliff Notes version, but I could go 100 different ways with it. So
Yeah, and I think the thing with smartphones is people don't realize that it's a problem until like you point it out to them, or they realize it's a problem, but it's like not as apparent of a problem because everyone has that problem kind of. It's like so systematic and so like in the fibers of just everything. I don't know if you get what
yeah.
I'm trying to say.
Oh no, totally. Like okay, the water is boiling. But all of culture and society, everything, we were frogs sitting in the boiling pot, and over the last 15 years,
Mhm.
it slowly increased in temperature. And the way I always say it is we don't even understand that technology happened to us like over the last 15 years since the smartphone was invented. It's kind of a weird way of looking at it, but we are still unpacking the consequences of what's transpiring
Mhm.
right now.
And the other thing that shocked me when I started my digital minimalism research 10 months ago now, that's crazy, is Steve Jobs when I read Cal Newport's book Digital Minimalism, Steve Jobs' original intent for the iPhone wasn't even for it to become what it is now. It was literally just for it to be like an iPod in your pocket. Like that was the whole intention. I don't know if you knew
Yeah, it
that,
was
but
music. Totally. Yeah, it was
yeah,
just
like
music driven.
which I know music and more podcast options are going to be on Wise Phone too. But I remember reading that and being like, oh my goodness, now smartphones are like these massive computers in our pockets that are dinging at us 24/7.
So,
Like,
yeah, I will say, I think he kind of knew because he said this statement in that same speech you're talking about. He said, hey, it's like a bicycle for your mind. And I think I actually disagree. It's more like a rocket ship, and our minds weren't made to go that fast, but he wanted it to be a bicycle. So maybe he did intend for it to be this nice, leisurely thing that helps us go a little faster than walking, but it is a rocket ship. And who knows his perception of that whole thing.
yeah. And if anybody's listening and is like, well, why don't I just lock down my smartphone? Like, I get that smartphones are a problem. Why do I need your phone or any other like dumb phone option? Why can't I just lock down a smartphone? Like, I'll get the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Okay, I actually consider my greatest competitor. I do not consider other minimalist phones. With what I'm doing, I am on the path to make a healthy phone, and that is not minimalism. Minimalism is all about the pursuit of less. I'm actually in the pursuit of what's good for us, and that does involve things and technology. It's not about just you live a minimalist life, you have four pieces of clothes. Let's live a so anyways. So when it comes to why not locking down a smartphone, that is my greatest competitor, a lockdown smartphone. And I think that people are deceived and they do not understand a couple things. Well, first, they do understand that, hey, I delete apps. How many of you listening right now have deleted apps out of good intentions and then you just reinstall it later? Like it's just, it doesn't work. But I think that is actually, yeah. But that's a symbol, that's a small metaphor of actually what's really going on here. And the truth is that the people making our smartphones are incentivized when they claim our attention with the smartphones. So the Apple App Store makes billions of dollars of revenue off of eyeballs on a screen. And so there is no sincerity from the people creating these devices to actually get you off of them. And so they're designed to suck you in. So there's like one huge facet is the just the incentives of the attention economy are just so baked into what we're doing. And that I use the hey, delete an app, add an app, but that there's a thousand examples I could point to, whether it's screen time breaking, just not working quite right, or they could make it better and they just don't. So that there's one huge component of it. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I've got a whole other angle to it as well. So
Well, so Lent last year, I was in a place where I was like, I'm so distracted, I'm so overwhelmed, like I need nothing on my phone. So I made my
which is like
phone a
everyone
dump.
right now. Yeah, I mean everyone's
Yeah,
that way.
no, I totally like that's what I did last year was but by the time like 6 weeks of this passed, I was like, I hate having to like force myself not to like I had to fight myself to not download apps. Or I
Yeah,
had to like do extreme things like go to work without my phone just because that's the only way I knew I wasn't gonna
yeah,
like go on it. And I got to a point where I was like, I don't want to have this battle with myself anymore. Like I have enough battles with myself every day that I want to eliminate one, get rid of decision fatigue. And that's what ultimately made me
yep,
realize I don't want a smartphone anymore. So that's what I would say to that
yeah.
from my
No,
personal
totally.
experience.
100%. And literally, the way I describe exactly what you just said is like, hey, discipline, we can grow discipline. It's a muscle, right? But it takes energy to exercise discipline in our lives. So if I am going to go try to create some new habit or do something very meaningful, like I personally have been challenged to go and disciple some guys in the local community. Like that's my new thing. That terrifies me. It's going to be a hard effort to figure out how to do it, what to do it. I'm intimidated by that, but that takes energy to do. So what ends up happening is maybe you could lock down your smartphone, but you're going to do exactly what you were just describing. You're going to be fighting it because it is designed to not be locked down. And you're going to have this daily exhaustion fighting this thing that is in your pocket all the time. And I would rather exert that same amount of energy into something that's healthy, better, productive, and meaningful in my life. So that discipline fatigue is a very real dynamic. That's probably the number one reason. So you figured it out. Way to go. Like, yeah.
Well, I also noticed that once I did make the switch and I didn't have the discipline fatigue anymore, was there's like nothing that's getting me to, like luring me away to what is right in front of my face. And that gets me to the next main point is JOMO versus FOMO. The only thing I want
Yeah.
people to have FOMO for is not having JOMO. Like I want you to be fearful of missing out on JOMO.
You got to
So
say what you have to say what JOMO is. Spell it out here because
JOMO
that
is the
could be
joy of missing out.
yeah.
Um, so it's like where you become so present to what's right in front of you
Mhm.
that you joyfully miss out on everything. And yeah, like that's basically what I started experiencing once like discipline fatigue like was eliminated for me. And that brings me to like the next thing I wanted to ask you was how have you seen JOMO in like the customer experience of the Wise Phone? I mean, I have my Wise Phone review on the Techless website
Yeah.
is literally this. I could not be happier that I am able to be connected with people through genuine connection without apps. I tell so many people about this phone. Like I literally am like, I want everyone having to have JOMO, so I just tell everyone about it kind of thing. Yeah, what have you seen on your end of all this?
Yeah. So It's amazing. I hired an ex Google product guy who's like super smart, and his superpower is interviewing customers, talking to them, getting into the very soft, nuanced things, not this tactical, oh, like, oh, we could increase conversion 5% if we did this, but very. So, anyways, hired him to ask, what's the next generation of Wise Phone? What should that be? What's the answer to what people are really yearn for? And part of that process is he went and interviewed tons and tons, and we have hours and hours and hours of video footage of people talking about their experience with Wise Phone. And one of the universal things that just came out almost guaranteed is people had greater feelings of peace and greater feelings of freedom. Like there was this burden that was lifted off of them. And pretty much universally, even the people that didn't love Wise Phone and returned it, like we interviewed people that didn't have a great experience, and they still admitted, like, hey, I had greater peace and greater feelings of freedom, but I want to get back in the rat race. So that's the summary anecdotally, but I also have a few personal experiences as well with that. So
Yeah, what have you joyfully missed out on since, starting your own digital minimalist journey? Because like I have my things that I joyfully miss out on and that I'm afraid of missing out on JOMO. So like I want my silent car drives or even just like 10 minutes of
yeah,
silence like in the morning. I want to like log off for the day and actually be logged off. Like I want to read. Like I have my like I love reading books, and reading books, I have a whole long stack of books, and I went from going from reading one book every 2.5 months to 2.5 books every month, like once I made this switch.
that is
And like I
awesome.
go through this stack fast, and like I'm like, I love this book so much that I will gladly miss out on all the Instagram reels. Like
Yeah. Oh, that's
joyfully
so
miss out on
awesome.
JOMO. So what's your experience like personally?
Well, okay. So first, I love how you went into like daily things, like little tiny nuanced, beautiful, magical moments. That's awesome because that's what it is, and that's actually what life is made up of, instead of these big grand. I think Americans oftentimes think of these big, like, oh, I ran a marathon, like these huge achievements, but I actually think if you focus on that stuff, you lose sight of the bigger picture, which is actually in those magical daily moments. So I would say my list is very similar to yours. It is walking. I walk to the office and it's like a few blocks. Walking outside every day, depending on the weather, it could be terrible. It could be raining, and I just walk to the office. Like it doesn't matter. But being in the weather, like submitted to whatever God has given us that day, be it 100 degrees or -5. That's a magical thing. Time with my daughter when I come home, like I do cut off. I have hard bounds on work because it's not bugging me in my pocket all the time. And I think the greatest joy is just presence. It's being focused. For me, it's mostly relationship, right? Like the level of depth of relationship in my marriage with my men friends that I hang out with, my 5 kids. It's just hit new levels, and that's my purpose in life. And so, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I really like how you said that sometimes we view like the big goals as like the highlights of life.
It's
But
American.
I that it's so funny because my crash and burn experience with like building up for graduating college and starting professional life and realizing very quickly that like I literally spent so much energy for these last 3.5 years to get this degree and then start this new life that's so much more exciting. And then I very quickly, like, once the high of all of that drained out, I was like, am I doing? Like that, I was like, what am I doing? I don't. And then I started freaking out because I'm like, my life doesn't look Instagram worthy. Because
Oh,
I was looking at all these people on Instagram, and it was
it's all a lie. It's
it
all a
was
lie.
I was
It's
like, "My
just
life isn't Instagram worthy." And it's like but I thought it would, like, once I got this thing, and I quickly realized that I was completely and I'm trying really hard to, like, rewire myself to not view life like that because it's easy to get into, like, "Oh, once I get this job," or once I ma what if I start my own thing?" Or, "What if I once I get married?" Like, it's easy to, like, do that, but I'm like, "No, that's not it's literally day to day and we don't know our last hour. We don't. So like don't you want to live every hour like it could be your last with just so with Jomo. Like I keep saying Jomo,
yeah,
but
no, no, totally. But no, but I think what you're experiencing is we're experiencing the same thing. And that is a growing confidence, like just a tremendous, profound confidence that these things that we're cutting out rigorously slicing out of our lives that culture even expects upon us to do, we're not regretting it. Like I have things like I don't answer my phone that much, like my voicemail says I don't check my voicemail. Send me an email, like, like send me a text message or something. And if you're not good enough buddy to send me a text message, it doesn't matter. Like I just don't check. So I put boundaries around my digital stuff, and I like expect people to meet me and my boundaries. And that's not the way the world operates. Literally, the assumption is I can contact anyone, anyhow, anyway. And that if you're not on 12 platforms, and I mean, even internally with Techless, like I'm not on anything but email. Like most companies have Slack and all these other garbage stuff. And so, but it's not, I'm growing in confidence that that's the way to go. So,
Yeah, Cal Newport, he actually wrote a book called A World Without Email, which actually
yeah,
like reimagines work without email, which is like email is
totally.
all you use. So
Well, no, but seriously, like it's in my mind, like, hey, in a year from now, maybe I shut off email, and the only way I do things is via video calls and face to face, and that's it. Like, it's a cheeky idea, and I might do it sometime. So we'll see.
maybe Techless should write a little pamphlet called A World with Just Email. Like no text, no calls, nothing. Except that would actually not, I don't know if how effective that would be, because then, oh, if I just need email, I won't buy your phone because I don't need a phone.
Yeah. Well, I think the principle is, I think what he's trying to say, really, if you think about a world without email, what he's really saying is that you don't have to buy into the system that the world says you have to do. That's the message. And that's the same thing that I'm saying. So I just chose email as my system.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I guess, brings us to another thing I wanted to ask you about is like the topic of convenience. So when you were on Matt Fradd's show,
Yeah.
one thing that like really stood out to me at the time and still does is you're gonna like life's gonna be inconvenient, but we're trained to just want convenience, 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 convenience all the time. But there's two inconveniences that you're choosing from. Like one inconvenience is the inconvenience of having distractions in your pocket all the time, and the other inconvenience is like potential boredom. First of all, my generation has no idea how to be bored. That's one topic.
Mm.
Second of all, why boredom over distraction? What are the benefits of boredom? And people hearing this might be like, what? Because like the minute we're bored, we just grab our phones or we just like try to race to something else.
Yeah.
Why isn't convenience the goal?
Well, okay. So you're phrasing this framework beautifully. On one side, you have the hyper connected, hyper convenient world, and look at where that's taken us. We're all frazzled out of our minds. Okay, so that is, everyone kind of feels it and knows that that's broken. But you alluded to the other side. I mean, why don't we all go be Amish? And and actually I know some people that are Amish, and we have really good conversations, and they're very whole human beings. But there's something beautiful that you miss out on. And if you go the full Luddite path, you are disconnected, and you can't live life. You can't hop on a plane, like you can't, there's things that if you reject technology, there's things that make you irrelevant in the world. And that's not our purpose. So how do we navigate those lines of inconvenience and not? And I think it's a matter of degrees, right? And be a matter of degrees and a matter of intentionality. And you have to parse this apart, and it's complex and it takes wisdom, and it's not just like this simple one size fits all solution. um but if you I'll just throw this out there to challenge the notion of convenient. Think about the things in the world that are convenient. Fast food. What if you lived on fast food? What if you lived off of convenience stores? I mean, convenience stores cost more. The selection is terrible. Fast food, you'll live unhealthy. And so when it comes to food, people intuitively understand, hey, doing things that are inconvenient, like I will sit down at a restaurant for an hour and a half instead of 15 minutes. Like that's a real cost in time. But guess what? They have healthier food. I'm going to pay twice as much for my meal. When I go to the grocery store, I might buy organic instead of not organic, and I might not eat. So we have already come to understand intuitively that inconvenience when it comes to food is by far the healthiest choice. And people buy into that. But I think technology, no one's really pushed back on the notion, and they just lived within that assumption that hyperconnection is the way to go. So uh, there's the case for inconvenience. I'm sure you have a couple more thoughts to add to that, though.
Well, I would argue that like training our like willpower to just succumb to convenience is actually very inconvenient for us long term.
Oh yeah.
Like like it's so inconvenient when you feel like you can't like live like if you don't have your phone in arm's reach. Like that is so inconvenient.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like
it deprives of us of joy and the most meaningful, beautiful things in life that are worthwhile. Every single one of those things is hard. I mean, marriage, that's hard, but it is good. It is sweet. And I'm on year 11 and it just gets better and better and better. Kids, hard. Foster kids, hard. Starting a company, hard. Working, what as an employee, like all of these things are hard, but that's just what gives us life purpose. And so I'd say chase after those things. So if you just live as convenience is the goal, then you'll die and just have a shallow life and it will be ultimately meaningless. And I'll just throw that out there. Like the purpose in life is not simple, easy, fun, convenient. We got to dig deeper than that.
see, we can find simplicity in like things like we talked about the simple daily habits like going on walks and stuff or but it's life is not 100% simple. Yeah. And I think there is something to be said about yeah, like not completely like never connecting, never like becoming a Luddite, like you said. Sometimes it's tempting because I'm like, oh man, my life would be great if I just like burned all my tech and like never talked to anyone again. But then I'm like, no, I'm like the most people person I know. Like I need people. Like I
Yeah.
don't want people, but I don't want tech.
Yeah.
As
And
I'm all tech.
no, totally. But I mean, I'll throw this out there. Like if it was 100% up to me, I would be a Luddite. I would be living in a mountaintop cabin in Colorado, playing banjo and painting. Like that's what I would do. But I have a bigger purpose than that. I have an obligation to love someone other than myself, to sacrificially reach out beyond myself. And I have a vision for life that's bigger than myself. And I think that's actually truly one of the roots of the bigger you start talking about Gen Z, right? Yeah, boredom's a thing, but I actually think that Gen Z, one of the challenges is that there's this assumption that's being handed to them is that life is about you and it is about your fun, it is about your entertainment, and very few Gen Zs. I'm talking people that have amazing parents that pour into them. There's a record amount of self-harm going on, and I think a lot of that has to be tied with that they don't have a purpose beyond themselves. And so I want to challenge people to think sacrificially about loving others. And this is part of that equation. So,
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a consequence. I was at a conference in early January, and one of the things that the speaker said at that conference was, what if all this depression and this loneliness, like, yeah, we can say social media, but it's really the sum of a generation that has grown up without God. Like,
yeah.
it's like, first of all, thank you for saying that because that's like the elephant in the room that like no one will say. But it's like, yeah, when you believe that it's just you and you're the only person in charge, then when things don't go well, it's like panic mode, you know?
Well, think about the lie of what tech is. I mean, literally, social media breeds egotism. It is me on my platform with my people, and I get to choose things and I make my content. This is my day. Like that tech has just put us at the center and made us God. And even, I mean, you take a lot of different things. I mean, even video games. It used to be couch co-op. You sat there next to your buddies in Mario Kart and you're ribbing each other, and that was super fun. And now it's like Xbox sitting in my living room talking to my friend who's 100 miles away. Like we have devolved and become increasingly more isolated. And there's a reason why iPhone has the word I as the first letter. I mean, there's selfishness intuitively baked into the assumptions of our tech. And I think a fundamental change needs to be brought to the tech space and even just philosophically is like, hey, life's not about you.
It's not about you, but it's also, if we want to live for others, let's talk about the fact that like our village has completely disappeared.
Mm,
Like, who knows the name of their neighbors, Because it's
yeah.
like we see on Instagram, we like see the insides of like all these strangers, influencers' houses, and like, oh, here's my buy my art, or like, here's how I set up my living room, or get ready with me, like here's how I'm cooking breakfast, like all that.
Yeah.
But it's like have you been inside the houses of the people 3 doors down from you? Do you even know their names? It's like,
Yeah.
I want us to get back to like we have our village again, and then we don't even feel the like we don't need to find community on all these platforms, you know?
Yeah, no, totally. 100 years ago, that hey, here's my art studio, that would have been in person. Like, and and what you're talking about is the digitation of relationship, which I think is actually a lie that sells us. Oh, connect. I mean, literally, Facebook. Like the the message was connect with people, and I actually think that it's not true. We're not connecting. Maybe we are communicating with them, like sending words back and forth, but connection happens in real life and authenticity when you're doing what you and me are seeing, where you see each other's facial expressions. I mean, there's something that gets lost when in a text message and an emoji can't communicate it. So,
What Facebook connecting really is it's social snacking. You're snacking
yeah.
so much that you have zero room for the actual good meal. So how many
Mm,
times have you heard of
wow.
like your brain's so fried at the end of the day, and then you just go home and you scroll, and then you don't even have the energy to leave your house afterwards because you're just like, you know, laying on your couch scrolling. I mean, guilty as charged. I did that for the
Mhm.
first 2 months of my post college life, and it was miserable, but I had no energy to even think about like meeting people at a local young adult event or something like that. And when you snack so much, then you don't even have the appetite for the real meal. And how many people don't even have the appetite
Mm,
or the desire to meet somebody like down the road or go like just say hi to people at a coffee shop? Like how many times like do you like make eye contact with someone at a coffee shop or wave to them and people kind of look at you like you're like threatening them or something? Like
yeah.
it's
No,
scary now. It's like
we well, and I'll tell you an interesting story. So I was in Pakistan a year ago. And don't ask why I was in Pakistan. I won't tell you. But I was there, and there I was in a big city of like, 500,000 people, and there was one movie theater. That was it in the whole city. And the culture in Pakistan is everybody sits and they eat together for hours. Like they'll have dinner from like 7 p.m. till 10:30, and they'll sit around and have coffee with one another. And there's this deep, rich relational thing that we've lost the art of. And we go back to garage door culture and we live off of social snacking. That's wonderful. I'm gonna start saying that. Um, and yeah, and I just see how literally I talk to these Pakistani people and they have something else in their eye, a new life, a new light, and an emotional intelligence that literally Americans could barely comprehend. It's beautiful. And I want some of that.
oh yeah, I definitely want some of that too. And I think it's one of those things where by the way, I got the term social snacking from a book. I did not come up with that. Uh, but I like with social snacking, it's like once you take it out of your life, you realize, oh my goodness, like that was taking up so much space that I wasn't even aware of. How could I be aware of it when everyone else around you is social snacking? And then maybe you're like, one fear I had before I deleted all my social media accounts was which I did before I got rid of my smartphone. But anyways,
Do it.
I
Anyone listening, do it. Just do it.
yes, yes, I will be on your team. But and if you have any worries about it, contact me. I'll dissuade all your fears.
Oh, that's awesome.
I I was like, am I not going to be as social? Like I'm like because I saw like everybody social snacking around me, and I guess I was so used to social snacking that I was worried that I would miss out on it. Like I
Yeah.
had FOMO about it. I was like, what is going to happen if I if I don't have this anymore? Like I was just afraid I was going to lose part of my social life. And ironically, I did. Like I
Yep.
did
You
lose a
totally
lot
did.
of connections.
Yeah. Hmm.
But I feel like what I gained was like so much greater than what I lost that I'm like, how did I like I'm like like I'm looking back and I'm like, how did I why was I so afraid of that? Like I guess like, I think that's kind of normal though, because like I think people are so afraid. Like I did a poll on my podcast at the beginning of January that's like, where are you guys at with ditching social media? And like a good amount of people answered with the result, I want to, but I'm afraid. Like, so I guess, what would you say to that sentiment?
Yeah. So first of all, you're right. You are sacrificing connection, communication with people that expect that of you, but you are going to double down. And the truth is, do you want to hear the wisdom of a bunch of social snackers that are depleted, or would you rather connect with a handful of people that are pursuing something deeper. And I would rather take the latter. But here's what I've learned that totally works in this. This works in community. So if you are on an island all by yourself and you're the only person with a wise phone and you cut off your social media and you have no one to go fill that gap with, there's some challenges with that. But if you have, I mean, I know a high school guy. He's actually going to come intern with Techless this summer, and he went and started this challenge amongst his friends. It was the screen time challenge, and they're not using Wise Phone or anything, but they're all putting in like $5 a week. And out of the group of seven of them, the top two guys with the lowest screen time get to keep all the money, and the ones at the bottom lose their $5. And that's a really cool experiment, and is the ethos of what I think does make this successful, is having a couple people to say, hey, let's do this together, let's delete social together, and let's fill the gap together. That's just magical if you can pull that off.
100%. And that's why I am doing what I'm doing with just trying to do some kind of online outreach is I want to be that person that people can ask the questions to if they're like, I'm thinking about doing this, but nobody around me has. Because I will say, I was one of those people that was like, I really want to do this, but who around me has? And there were two people in my life at the time, praise God, that had one hadn't had like been on her social media in like 6 months or so or something like that. Another like had permanently deleted it like a year prior. And both of them like told me like genuinely what life was like without it, and it like assuaged the like FOMO I had. And then yeah, they were the people that like I did regular calls with to just like, oh, you guys are the people that I can just like, you know, rave about the
Yeah.
digital minimalism life with, and y'all are gonna get it, and y'all aren't
Yeah.
gonna like think I'm weird or like get tired of this, like you
No,
know.
it's great. And the other thing you could do is with those type of people, I mean, just a couple friends, you say, hey, let's do this for 48 hours. And you don't have to commit to like change, blow up your whole life. I mean, yeah, that's actually a really cool step to take. But I think if you go for 48 hours, you'll see something interesting happen within yourself. And I won't say it's all good, because sometimes there is some like, hey, I quit this addiction. And whenever you give up smoking, like, hey, the first day's tough, like, so, but 48 hours and then maybe 30 days. So I'd say bite size as is wise and reasonable for you, and then commit to doing something for 30 days. And then maybe you find some new sustainable habit. Maybe you hop back on a social channel if that's like really important, but like take it, intentionally, and don't just stumble into the assumptions of what's handed to me is the food that I should eat.
I think one thing that people don't realize about digital habits is it's very challenging. If you successfully did this, I'm proud of you because I have yet to meet someone who has or hear of someone who has. But it's like you just decide, oh, I want to spend only 1 hour a day on Instagram. Well, with digital habits, it's one of those things where the way the app is designed and the way that you're just weak because humans are weak. Like, you're like, if you're gonna spend an hour on Instagram, it's gonna quickly turn into 2, 3, 4 hours, at least for me. Um,
Yeah.
so it's hard to have that limit on yourself, especially since Apple has, there's so many ways around those limits. I know that they have a like App Store screen time password now. I can't say I'm familiar with it because I haven't had an iPhone in like almost 10 and 11 months now. Oh my goodness.
Nice.
But there needs to be a time where you like are away from it so that you can grow in that realization of, oh, how much time am I actually on it? Because if you just decide overnight, oh, I'm just gonna keep everything I have and just change my habits, like that's a lot harder. I don't want to say it's impossible because I'm sure it is, but you, a period of like 30 days, 40 days, two
Yeah.
months, 3 months, like where you don't have it. And then when you add it back into your life, you can be a lot more objective and less subjective to your own
Yes.
like weak will. Is that what you have
Yeah.
seen in the experience?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So like I said 48 hours, that's the low-hanging fruit, and that's just to shock your system, right? But the true like the true reset takes 30 days. That's how long it takes. And we did this thing where you could rent a Wise phone. We're not doing it now, but you could rent a Wise phone for 30 days, and we had like a vision kit with cards that you could like help guide those 30 days, because there's a very distinctive journey that people go on in those 30 days, and it takes that long to realize and to calm down and to detox whatever what's going on. And then after that, you might jump back into something that's a little more tech enabled. But that's about the time it takes to hit the reset button.
It's funny because when I first had my wife's phone, I was nothing but elated about it, and I was kind of like, "Am I doing this wrong? I'm not having this withdrawal feeling," and I think it's because
Oh,
I made
nice.
well, I made my iPhone a dumb phone for, like, the 30 days before the 30, 40-ish days before I got a wise phone, so I think that's when I experienced it, and
mm,
the withdrawal was on top of fighting my own willpower and, like, doing extreme things like, "Oh, today I'm just not gonna go to work with my phone because that's the only way I know I'm not gonna check it." Like, it's which is so bad that that's how much of a slave I was to it. So I think, like, by the time I switched, and I knew I wanted to switch, I'd been past it. So I was like, "Oh, I'm doing the wise phone thing wrong," you know?
No, but that's normal. And honestly, that whole like, hey, I can't get away from my phone, that's super normal. Like literally, there was a Deloitte study, 100 million people, and 38% of them wanted to cut back from their phones and could not do it. So that you cannot expect to just will your way into a healthier habit or just to change something without a systemic change to your life. So
Yeah, tagging off of that, I was listening to a podcast a couple months ago, I think, about smartphones. And it was this like married couple who both like are they rant about smartphones all the time, which is I think is cool. But one thing that they talked about is like telling someone who is addicted to their phone, which is pretty much most people. I think that's fair to say. Um, Telling someone who's addicted to their smartphone to just stop spending time on their phone is like but, like, when it's in your back pocket is like telling an alcoholic to stop drinking when they have
yeah,
a bottle in their hand all the time,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
And that's why you have to go to the systemic change level. Like I was with a group of men this last week, and it was really cool. It was an in-person event downtown Austin. And it was a bunch of Christian business owners, the average married, four kids type of thing, and just talking about business challenges, discipleship, all this stuff. And it's a super life-giving group. I meet with them twice a year. And again, in person, we're talking about really cool, serious stuff. But one of the yeah, it was just a good group. So I could get into the details of systemic changes, but one of the big takeaways, here's where I was going with this. One of the big takeaways is that they talked about the power of a 7-day rhythm and how you have to plan your entire life. The backbone for your entire life is what is your 7-day rhythm, and how you have to tweak that and master plan. If you're not doing it in 7 days, then you're not doing it at all. Like that's not part of your identity. You can't claim it. If you say I'm an author and you don't write consistently within a 7-day rhythm, then you're not an author, like period. And so I think when it comes to this technology, the solution is rhythm-based systemic process change.
And freeing yourself from tech prison. One of the Wisestone customer reviews literally said, "Wisestone was my lifeline away from tech
Mm,
prison." Like, tech prison. It's like, you don't even know you're in a prison if you
yeah.
don't
Well,
no
no,
one tells you you're in prison or you've only been in prison, you know?
yeah, well, he's one of those 38% that wants to cut back. He just saw it as a little bit more oppressive than, hey, I kind of want to cut back. He's like, no, I really want to cut back, and this thing keeps sucking me back in. So that's a very common sentiment and some poetic language around it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's funny because like, you know, virtue's in the middle, right? Like the one extreme is like never using your phone, never like just breaking your phone and your laptop and never using digital communication again. And the other extreme is like our current age of just technology assumptions. And virtue's in the middle. And I think for a while I just thought, oh, virtue is having all the tech and just never and you being minimal about it, like having Instagram, having Facebook, and just never or not like checking it as much as you say you want to check it or something. Or just having the app and not opening the app. Like that's how I always viewed it. And in some ways, yeah, but I'm starting to think that like the middle is like needs to shift because of how these companies are designing these products against you to because they
Yeah.
don't want good at the end of the day.
No,
Um,
no. And I would say here's a fundamental shift in our technology in the last 20 years. So our tools affect us profoundly. Like if you are an iron worker and you're working in a mine with a pickaxe, your biceps grow. You get calluses on your fingers. Like that tool that you're using works into your body and it becomes something. If you're, I mean, like, and you play piano, your fingers learn how to play piano. And so literally tools have an impact upon us. And when it comes to technology, everyone thinks that tech is neutral, and it's not. There is tech that is absolutely evil and lends us to narcissism and selfishness and depravity and pornography. And there are tech that is good and leads us into great family relationships and restoration and, time with God. And so I think you have to ask the question about each tool. Does this medium generally tend towards evil? Does it tend towards good? And you have to think critically about it. And so if you just say, oh, I'm just going to be on these tools and they're neutral and it depends on how I use it, that falls short, because now what's changed in the last 30 years or 20 years is the tools don't just sit there like a pickaxe sits there. You have to go pick it up. Now the tools chase you around and follow you around and follow you and pull on you. And the stakes have raised between good and evil, and the medium itself.
Yeah, for sure. Like, is your tech a tool or is it like following you everywhere and
Yeah.
like trying to get it to use you? Like, yeah, you're totally right. Like a toolbox is not like hopping around with you and like begging to be used.
Yeah.
Like,
The
um,
initiative of the tech is the danger today, and it never used to
yeah.
do that.
Well, speaking of initiatives and speaking of what Techless is working on right now, what can people look forward to with the Wise Phone 2, the Wise Phone 2 being a tool, excuse me.
Yeah.
And yeah, talk about the Wise Phone 2 and what was the vision for it?
Yeah, cool. So Wise Phone 1, which you have, is a minimalist phone. It is for digital minimalists who want to take the dive. Yep, I love it. It's beautiful. We're sold out. I mean, we might have a couple left on the website, but like by the time this podcast goes live, we're sold out. And so that was Wise Phone 1. But what we really learned was that talking to lots of people is that people want something between a minimalist or a dumb phone and a smartphone, and want something that asks the questions of what's good for you, what's not. And we're calling it a healthy phone. So Wise Phone 2 is a healthy phone. We are going to have some third-party tools, carefully curated, thinking about you. So things that you need, tools, not apps. So no social media, no pornography, no browser, no games, no solo media, anything you could watch. We are going to have things like banking apps, two-factor authentication, transportation, Uber, maps, stuff like that. Things that you just need to live your life and get around, that are more in the necessitary category. It's a really complicated question of what goes on and what doesn't, but we're chewing on it. It's Pandora's box. I mean, so anyways, that's Wise Phone 2. In a nutshell, we are working very hard on that. It's shipping out later this year. We're also doing a fundraise right now. So we're doing an equity crowdfunding raise where we can actually take like, hey, $500 if you want to invest in Techless, you can be part of this company vision. So super excited about that. We just put a page up on our website to take emails. We're going to launch in about a month or so. So those are kind of the two big things going on with the company at this moment.
I really appreciate you saying healthy phone because I'll admit I think digital minimalism very much sounds like use as little tech as possible, kind of thing.
It
And
does.
like,
That's the tenet of digital minimalism, and I don't necessarily subscribe to that, actually.
yeah, but it's more like intentionally decide what tech you will use and then optimize the benefit and then minimize what you do want to be minimalist about is being like being sucked in and being using your tech instead of authentic connection.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
and
thank you.
and
So
just to add on to that, like, so right now in the world of smartphones, social media, everything is going on right now. People see that something's broken and they're shooting for ethical or humane or this like baseline of do no harm. And we actually want to push well past that into the stage of what is actually good and redemptive. And so we're not saying what's our minimum we should do that's good and not exploitative. We want to get into the essence of really what redeems your life, what's good for you, how can you live fully, and we're trying to build that. So again, that's the multi-year vision, but we're working that direction.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, I just have Wise Phone 1, and I can definitely say it's funny because people are like, "Does it have this? Does it have this?" And in my mind, I'm like, "You don't need it," because like for me, I get a kick out of like using as little as possible. Like I
Yeah.
get a kick out of like not using GPS like almost ever and stuff. But like
Yeah.
that's my life,
Well, we've
But
sold
I don't want to
thousands
see
of
any harm with
phones.
like, yeah,
No, we've sold thousands of phones to digital minimalists. That is our primary target market for Wise Phone 1, but we're moving beyond that now because
yeah,
it's because of that tension, that this is our response to that tension of I don't want to be a Luddite. And the minimalist phones is a little bit too high of a jump for many people. And we're trying to
yeah.
lower that
Mhm.
inconvenience hurdle.
And it also like in some ways like digital minimalism is not the pitch. The pitch is like a healthy life,
Hmm.
where you don't feel like you're like, the FOMO. Maybe if you had like the ultimate minimalist phone or whatever, where like it only has phone call or something, like a landline or whatever, maybe you would genuinely be missing out on some good stuff that nowadays you would. Um, so yeah, I think that definitely helps because at the end of the day, what you want is a phone that will like get you by with like what you need, but then everything else, you get to live that JOMO.
You got it. We're working on it. We're making it right now.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I mean, I have Wise Phone 1, but I'm excited just to see just how much Wise Phone and Techless continues to progress because this is my favorite phone ever, and I tell everyone about it. So
Awesome. Well, thanks. So we are like, I'll just say it. We are an early stage startup. We are working hard. Like I have 39 hours of meetings a week booked on my calendar. So when do I get actual work done? Like we're working hard. And the team lives off of stories like yours. This is why we're doing what we're doing. So I mean, I'm just grateful for like you being so excited because that's what fuels us when it's 10 at night and like I don't want to do this. So thanks for the enthusiasm.
yeah, thank you so much for building this phone so the rest of us don't have to. We can just enjoy this phone.
I love
All
it.
right. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast. This interview was so insightful, so fun, and I'm just excited to tell more people about what you guys are doing and hopefully have something to share with people if they have questions about this phone.
Yeah, just grateful for the time. It was a super energizing conversation. You are so intentional, and it's so much fun to engage on that level. So thanks for the opportunity. And just, yeah, we're excited about us changing the world together. Let's keep doing it.
Yes, and God bless.